Today, I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind for a while, but I've just never really had the chance to really talk about it, and that is where do political leanings and the gender and identity politics where do they have a place in our pulpits? During the last couple of years, especially during COVID and all of the political riots and the riots on police brutality and gender and women's rights, it really brought to my attention, where does this have a place, if any, in our pulpits, in our congregation? Like, where should our pastors and how should they be treating these situations? And I'm not going to be honest, my pastor did not handle it in the greatest way. I've seen other pastors really lean heavily into this. I mean, you can call it woke, you can call it left-leaning liberal. It's really just the idea that, your identity is not in your race. Our identity is in Christ. And the only thing that's going to fix racism, police brutality, anything that you can imagine that's just terrible about the world, the only thing that can fix that is Christ. And unfortunately, what I saw from people close to me, people that I know, pastors that I look up to, like David Platt, Matt Chandler, who I've read many of their books and watched hours and hours of their sermons, I saw them leaning into this idea and these ideas that we have a place in our pulpit for this type of politics. And abortion's one thing, because I believe it's a human rights issue, not a political issue. But the idea of racism and trying to fix our country and try to fix the mindset of racism is a little... it's a little nonsensical, because you're not going to be able to fix racism and police brutality and injustice by speaking into existence and trying to change minds. You are going to fix racism and brutality and injustice by winning people over to Christ. What would change someone more? That you can debate them into why looking down on someone for their race, gender, sexuality, whatever you want, looking down on someone is wrong, or preaching the gospel, people getting called to Christ and becoming new. Because I'll tell you right now, like the one thing that's persistent in Christians is you can't be a Christian and call yourself a born again believer and be racist. I don't think there's any place in a born again believer's heart for racism or straight out injustice. Like you can't claim to be a Christian and then hate someone for their race. You can't be shown the love of God and understand and know that kind of love and grace and then go belittle someone else for the way they look. It's just not... Like, are we still going to have biases? Of course, but are we going to be a straight-on racist and want to hurt people and support that kind of stuff? Absolutely not. So we should be preaching the gospel first, and like if you want to believe and uphold, that we just need to convince everyone not to be racist anymore, or not to be sexist, or to not spread injustice, then I believe there's plenty of time for that on the other 6 days of the week, and I don't think it should be prevalent in our pulpits. I don't think the pulpit is a place to be spewing that kind of stuff, especially since even our politicians can't agree on that kind of stuff. So why are we thinking that that's solid enough to preach in the pulpit? There's some pastors who won't even preach about abortion in the pulpit, and that's a pretty divisive issue amongst some Christians as well. So I just don't understand how pastors can essentially whore out their pulpits to this idea of we're going to fix the world with changing their minds about injustice. No, you're not. You're not going to be able to do that. The only thing that can do that is Christ, and the only way he can do that, the only way Christ is going to do that is by calling people to him, and that's through us preaching the gospel. So that's what they need to focus on. And I am just tired of seeing people like David Platt, Matt Chandler, these great men of God, just fall victim to, I need to talk about identity politics in our pulpit because that's going to help somehow our congregation or our community. It's not. The gospel will. And whenever a pastor takes time away from preaching the gospel to talk about every single act of injustice and why we need to fix racism or our laws, or that's what's going to solve all of our problems. It's not. Our problems are not going to be solved by changing laws or by putting cameras on police officers. Like that might help a little bit, but that's not going to actually help their souls in the long run. What will help people and what will help everyone is by winning hearts and minds to Christ by preaching the gospel.